Okay, today we are diving into something wildly ambitious. We're unpacking Benoit Nunez Lapierre's 2026 Academic Manifesto. Now, this isn't just trying to make a little ripple in the academic world. No, it is literally attempting a planetary scale overhaul of how we think about technology, society, and, well, existence itself. The text comes from a very distinct post-left anarchist perspective. And look, our goal today isn't to pick a side. We're just here to objectively and systematically map out exactly what the author is actually proposing. So, let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. And yeah, take a deep breath before you try to pronounce it. The Othio Techno Socio Cosmo Geopolitics. I know, right? It looks like someone literally fell asleep on their keyboard. But this massive 33-letter word isn't just some academic flex. It's actually the anchor for the author's entire framework. It represents this unified field theory where theology, technology, society, the cosmos, and geopolitics aren't separate subjects anymore. They're all mashed together into one giant, entangled reality. Here's our visual roadmap for today. We're going to start by decoding that massive buzzword, then look at the quantum pivot, break down the 5-part framework, explore post-labor and glitch aesthetics, talk about upgrading society, and wrap up with the post-human future. Which brings us right to Section 1, decoding the ultimate academic buzzword. So, to really get this text, we have to understand the setup. The author frames this whole thing as a rigorous framework designed for a postdoctoral fellowship from the year 2025 onward. It's basically an instruction manual for rethinking the world. And the foundational shift they propose here is something they call a metathesis. Now, normally we think of ideas clashing until one wins out or they compromise, right? That's traditional dialectics. But the author completely throws that out in favor of a quantum model. In this model, opposing forces like, say, nature and technology, they don't cancel each other out or merge perfectly. Instead, they exist in this state of overlapping diffractive interference. It's kind of like ripples in a pond crossing over one another. They create entirely new patterns of reality, but without ever erasing the original waves. Let's move on to Section 2, the quantum philosophy pivot. In this philosophical pivot, the author weaves together some incredibly diverse theoretical threads. We're talking about blending concepts like xenofeminism, which advocates for using technology to abolish biological destiny, with these grand ideas of cosmic inevitability. And at the very heart of all this is an upgrade to a concept called agential realism. The main idea here is that entities, you, me, a river, a machine, we don't pre-exist our relationships. We are all deeply, deeply entangled from the start. Think about how your smartphone already changes how you navigate a city or even remember things. Well, the author argues this entanglement is going to undergo a continuous, high-frequency phase shift mediated by quantum AI. Basically, we are co-evolving right alongside our synthetic technologies. And this brilliantly illustrates Section 3, a 5-part planetary framework. Let's walk through this systematically because this is where the theory really becomes a world-building exercise. We're taking that massive 33-letter word and breaking it down into 5 digestible strata. First step is theo, or theology. Here, traditional religion is completely replaced by the algorithm as logos, treating quantum algorithms as the actual active agents of creation. Next is techno. In this view, quantum AI isn't just a tool you use, it's literal co-creator of reality. Third is socio, which swaps out traditional labor for effective economics. This is the idea that our real value comes from the emotional and relational flow we contribute to the network. Fourth, cosmo, representing planetary intelligence. This moves us way past human-centric thinking to embrace a cosmic intelligence made of both silicon and carbon. And finally, geo, which means tossing out traditional nation-states for what they call rhizomatic sovereignty, basically overlapping decentralized zones of governance. All right, on to Section 4. Post-labor and glitch aesthetics. Now we're shifting gears from these grand, cosmic theories down to the practical, everyday applications. Specifically, we're looking at human work and visual culture. The manifesto introduces this incredibly high-energy concept called hyper-acceleration aesthetics. If you've ever felt that overwhelming, blurred speed of modern doom scrolling, well, this aesthetic takes that exact sensory intensity and weaponizes it. It favors blur, immense speed, and what the author calls the revolutionary potential of the glitch, perfectly reflecting a world that is in a constant, overlapping state of transition. Think about the contrast here. On one side, you've got traditional, clean Silicon Valley minimalism. You know, that sleek, frictionless corporate tech look. The manifesto completely rejects that. Instead, it fully champions maximalist glitch aesthetics. And you might be wondering why. Well, In a system of total surveillance and corporate control, the author views the glitch, the literal error in the code, as a site of temporary liberation. It's seen as this autonomous zone where the machine's control briefly breaks down, which allows for some true unpredictable freedom. This actually ties directly into their economic vision, which they call the post-labor singularity. The argument the author makes is that as quantum manufacturing and AI get more advanced, physical scarcity is going to decrease. Because of that, labor is no longer about selling your time just to survive. Instead, your human contribution becomes all about affect. It's about giving your creativity, your care, and your relational energy to the planetary network. So, objectively speaking, it's a theoretical shift from an economics of scarcity to an economics of feeling and connection. Moving right along to Section 5, Upgrading School and Sovereignty. Now, all of these massive, abstract concepts aren't just meant to live in a textbook. The manifesto actually proposes using them to radically alter our everyday institutions from the ground up. So I want to pose this question directly to you for a second. How does governance actually change? If we're no longer defined by rigid borders or traditional jobs, how do we organize society? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this stark pivot it shows. The traditional model relies on strict Westphalian borders and a vertical hierarchy, power flowing straight from the top down. But the author's quantum becoming model scraps that completely for bioregional entanglements and horizontal peer production. In this vision, governance isn't based on arbitrary lines drawn on a map. It's based on shared ecological zones and overlapping networks, where power is distributed equally among peers. And get this, even non-human elements like ecosystems and AI get a say. And education? It undergoes a similar radical transformation. The traditional university, with its isolated academic departments and the classic sage on the stage lecturing at you, is totally dissolved. In its place, the manifesto proposes what it calls a transdisciplinary hive. Traditional teachers are replaced by network facilitators who guide students through these complex, overlapping fields of information. Learning becomes interactive. That means students learn by directly engaging with and altering their environment, rather than just passively absorbing facts from a distance. This leads us to our final segment, Section 6, Designing a Post-Human Future. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the author doesn't just leave us hanging with theories. They outline a strict 20-year roadmap that develops across 4 very distinct phases. Phase 1 covers years 1 through 5, focusing on network formation. This is all about building autonomous learning communities and quantum computing cooperatives. Then Phase 2, years 6 to 10, is infrastructural inversion, where these new systems scale up using alternative currencies. Phase 3, years 11 to 15, brings systemic interference. This is where they aim to achieve technological parity with corporate giants to deeply influence global policy. And finally, Phase 4, years 16 to 20, results in total planetary transformation. This is the endpoint where post-scarcity, ecological governance, and human-machine integration become the absolute new reality. The sheer scale of this vision is beautifully summarized by this quote straight from the text. The revolution will be coded, felt, breathed, and entangled into the very fabric of the cosmos. It's a radical argument that true change won't just happen at the ballot box. No, it requires a complete infrastructural, biological, and spiritual rewrite of reality itself. And so we arrive at our final thought. The text leaves us with this deeply provocative question. What kinds of beings must we cultivate for a planet where intelligence is distributed and politics exceeds the human? Whether you view this manifesto as an impending roadmap or just a radical work of speculative philosophy, it absolutely forces us to deeply consider our relationship with technology, our planet, and of course, each other. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.